Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special podcast video thing that we're doing. I've got an interview for you today with Katrina Garsten, who's from Obsidian, has been working hard on Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Hi, Katrina. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you. Great to join you.
So, Pillars of Eternity was a game that we really enjoyed. Really enjoyed, actually, as a fan of Baldur's Gate back in the day. It really kind of scratched an itch, I think, that a lot of RPG developers have kind of left behind. So, thank you for that. Looking forward to the second one as well. Perhaps you can start by telling me, from your own perspective, what is it about this game, the sequel, that you're most excited about?
So I think that there's a couple things that I'm really excited about. The first thing is the story itself. Our writers are extremely talented, and they've written an incredible continuation that takes place in a completely different section of Aora, and we're keeping most of it a secret until the game comes out, but it's one of the things that I am the most excited about because it completely immerses you in the game and really makes you feel connected to the factions of the Deadfire and the companions. And depending on what choices you make, it could have a completely different outcome in the game. So I'm really excited about the narrative. Additionally, I love the ship aspect of the game. We now have a world map, and you can go anywhere you want. So it's a very open world feel, and the ship customization is incredible, and the ship combat is also really exciting. So I think just the feeling of sailing the high seas, having a chance of running into a pirate party is really exciting. So yeah, those are my two main things that I'm really excited about.
Sure. You look after the community side of things because obviously these are kickstarted and the communities are particularly important, I guess, to these projects. Given that Pillars of Eternity is, as an RPG, it's very heavily focused on the story side of things, does it make it your job difficult that you can't really talk about the story with your community?
No, not at all. It's part of the excitement and knowing that the backers and fans are really looking forward to things. And of course they ask us, but we don't want to spoil anything. And we can still talk a ton about all of the new features without giving anything away. So it's not difficult. It just makes it more exciting for us, I think, to keep all of it a secret.
Fair enough. One of the things that was so interesting about Pillars of Eternity is the way that you integrated all those stories from the community. Obviously when you do that, you've got a whole lot of different, a very large number of people with their own sense of creativity and their own kind of style when it comes to writing stories. Was it a difficult thing for the development team to kind of take all of that, or all of those stories, and then make sure they're implemented into the game in a way that still maintains the kind of the atmosphere and the tone of the game itself, and obviously the main plot? Is that I assume that's something that's coming back for Pillars of Eternity 2. I must admit I haven't actually played it yet, so...
Yeah, definitely. We have a ton of backer content going into the second game, and it's not difficult for us to implement because our backers have such incredible ideas, and they know the world, they know our lore, and so most of them have really awesome suggestions that fit in with the world, and so we don't need to modify their content that much. However, for the few people that say would propose something that doesn't quite fit with our lore, we always have phone calls with them, we email them back and forth, and we come to a decision that will best fit with the lore, but also will make sure that the backers are still happy. So it hasn't been difficult at all. It's actually been a very enjoyable process to talk with all of the backers, it makes things fun, and it just contributes to the game and it's even more exciting.
Okay, sure. This game, the original as well, they were made quite clearly to continue, I guess, the spirit and the love of the traditional classical RPG that Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and the like were. Did you get much feedback from your community and from players from the first game that it was bringing in a new kind of generation of players to this style of game? Because RPGs have moved, a long way in the years since, and this is a very classical take on the genre. Is it still relevant, do you think? I mean, obviously it was successful, but is it still relevant creatively speaking?
Yes, I think so. So we still have, the tribute to the old Infinity Engine games. But another fun thing that we're doing is trying to bring in new features that will just add to that, and it'll still give you the same feel and like a tribute to the Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and all that. But we try and figure out what new things we can incorporate that will not just bring in new fans and people who typically aren't familiar with this genre, but also continue to, I don't know, add to the Infinity Engine style of game. So, for example, for our difficulty levels, we've added in a storybook difficulty, and it makes it almost impossible to die. It's more of just an experience to kind of get the narrative and not have to worry about dying in combat. And that's something that can bring in players who don't typically play this genre of game. And so it makes the experience easier for them. And then when they get more used to the controls and the combat, you can increase the difficulty while you're playing. So then you can just, continue to make it a little bit more challenging because it is, the combat style is very challenging, and a lot of people aren't used to it unless you've actually played the old Baldur's Gate and games like that. But I think we're trying to widen the audience this time. I think it started working with Pillars 1, but we wanted to ask ourselves, what can we do in Pillars 2 that will bring in even more people?
Sure. What do you think it is about the visual side of the game, the kind of the top-down isometric, Infinity Engine approach to game visuals that is appealing to people?
So I think it's just a way to view the environments and the areas from a distance, and you can zoom in and all, but I think it's just kind of an incredible experience to load into an area, especially in Pillars, that's gigantic, and the background is a 2D render, and so much work has gone into the environments and everything else that just kind of gives you a sense of awe and wonder. So personally, I really like that, top-down view, just because it gives you the opportunity to soak everything in and view your entire party instead of, say, for first-person, just focusing on one section at a time. It just kind of like overwhelms you with really awesome visuals.
So it's kind of the god view, as in a sense.
Yeah.
It's more than just your party. It's kind of everything that's going on around them as well. Yeah.
It's almost as if you're ASS looking down on the party. But yeah, it's also very D&D like, and so it draws in a lot of people who are familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons with playing that as well.
Sure. In terms of, do you think it's because it's quite a subtle, I guess, visual style in that because it is so far pulled back, you don't get to see the most minute details of characters and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, you've got the paper doll models in the inventory screen and so on, but for the most part, you're looking down on fairly small representations of your characters. Was it ever a concern with the developers that it might put a distance between the players and the actual connecting with the characters as well? Is it something that you kind of rely on your storytelling to fill in as a gap, or in terms of making the whole the characters relatable and the story something that people can really connect with? How have you resolved that within the Infinity Engine style perspective that you've chosen?
So we do a lot of that through the narrative. However, the amount of detail we were able to get in Pillars 2 is a significant improvement from the first game. So if you do zoom in, you can see that level of detail. But as far as companion relationships and communication and their quest lines and whatnot, we mainly portray that through the narrative. And I think that we've done a really good job, especially with relationships and the companions' quest lines, to bring you closer and make you feel more connected with all of the companions.
Okay, sure. In terms of the actual characters that we get to play around with, is it a large bunch this time around? Is it the same number of characters as last time?
So we have our 3 returning companions, Adair, Aloth, and Paladina. But then we also have several new companions. I think we have, there's 4 additional companions as well that you can encounter during the game, and all of them have their own unique quest lines. And they're not present in the first Pillars. So you're able to learn a lot more about those companions and where they came from. But in addition to all of the companions that you can run into, we also have 4 sidekicks, and they don't have as in-depth of storylines as the main companions. However, they do have their own, personalities and things that they like and dislike. And so you can run into an additional 4 companions during your journey.
Okay, sure. One of the things I liked about the original Pillars is the way that it kind of it reapproached the open-ended kind of quest structure from the Baldur's Gates of old, where those old games were very heavily kind of reliant on what alignment your characters were, and it was always kind of an arbitrary. Do you pick your companions based on whether they're good or evil, and that kind of affects how you play. With Pillars, it seemed to be a much more organic kind of approach where you had a lot more freedom to be good sometimes, be evil sometimes, and all of that kind of stuff, and be more fluid with alignment, which seems to be, more realistic, I put in inverted commas, a way of approaching it. I assume that that's a continuation with this one as well?
Yes, definitely. So it is a very kind of organic way of deciding if you're going to be good or evil. You can select which faction you want to side with as well. We have 4 main factions in the game. And so depending on which faction you choose, they all have their own ideals and beliefs. And depending on which faction you side with, that faction could have a huge rivalry with another one. And so that faction will begin to dislike you, and you could get attacked at sea by a pirate party with the same faction. And so that's one of the big decisions that you can make. You can also decide to go off on your own and do whatever you want. It makes the experience a bit harder for you, but it is definitely a possibility. Additionally, when you're talking with any major NPCs or your companions, you can decide whether you want to be a huge jerk. You can decide whether you want to be nice, and that can affect the outcome of the game. Because we added in relationships this time, additionally, if you say something to one of your companions that they dislike, it could trigger them to leave the party. So it's really up to you what you want to do. And I mean, if you really want to go in and kill all the NPCs in the town, you can do it. They will cower in fear and run from you, but it's a possibility. So it's really up to you. And throughout the game, you'll kind of develop your own personality and how you react to situations.
Okay, sure. How many endings are we looking at with this game? How many times do we have to replay it to see the various paths you can take through the narrative?
A lot. I actually don't have a set number for you, but because of the character customization and the companions you pick up, the quest lines you complete, the factions you side with, and the reactivity from Pillars 1, you can just play the game as many times as you want, and you will most likely always get a different result each time you play. It's pretty incredible, and this game is huge, but it's really making the replayability of the game that much more exciting.
Okay, sure. And then I guess just as a final question, I wanted to ask about the ship battles, because obviously they're a major feature of the game, and you've mentioned them a couple of times through this interview as well. One of the things that really intrigued me was that they seem to, I mean, once again, I haven't actually played them yet, but I've obviously seen video, and they're very almost like a old game book style, with paper and pencils. It kind of captures that aesthetic. Why did you decide to kind of take this kind of real key gameplay feature and then do something so classical with it, rather than, I guess, try and do something visually dynamic or whatever some people might want to say about it?
That's actually a very good question for our design director, Josh Sawyer, but I can always get you an answer from him. But additionally, there are multiple ways to play out ship combat, because we do have the storybook view while you're fighting. However, you can also you can decide to run away with your ship if you want, or you can fight just with the turn-based storybook style. However, if you want to actually fight, you can bring your ship up to theirs and then fight with deck-to-deck combat, and it's the classic, real-time with pause fighting. But as for like why we decided to do it, I can definitely get you an answer from Josh Sawyer.
Sure. No, that'd be good. All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers off everything I had to ask. Thank you very much for your time. That was really great, and obviously it's a very exciting game. Looking forward to the eventual console announcement, if it hasn't happened yet. I have to play my games on console. I don't do much PC gaming, but yeah, I love the first on PS4, and looking forward to whatever consoles this one ends up on as well.
And it's actually coming to Switch as well. So it's been announced. It'll be releasing, I believe, holiday time this year. So.
Oh well, there's the platform I'll be playing it on then. Everything's better on Switch.